The ocean does not care about your plans. This is the first thing a surfer learns. The second is that you go anyway. At 15, Catherine's body had made the transformation that adolescence demands of athletes. The center of gravity shifted, the muscles changed their relationships with the bones. The whole physical instrument that had served her in one way now required recalibration. This is the period when many young surfers plateau or regress, when the coordination that seemed effortless at 12 becomes effortful at 15. Catherine went through this. She was not exempt from it. There were months when she surfed worse than she had at 13, and she knew it, and she dealt with it with the combination of frustration and discipline that had always characterized her approach to difficulty. She worked harder. Ricardo watched this period with the particular attention of a coach who has seen talented athletes lose themselves in the transition to adulthood, and others emerge from it stronger. He gave her something he had not given her before: criticism of a different kind than technique. He told her that she needed to develop presence in the water. Not confidence exactly, which she had, but the ability to project herself as a competitive force. Catherine thought about this for several days. Then she went back to Ricardo and told him she disagreed. She said she had watched the surfers she most admired, including several Brazilian women who dominated the international circuit, and that what made them formidable was not the projection of authority in the way he described it, but something more specific: the quality of their surfing in moments of pressure, the ability to produce their best work when the stakes were highest. Ricardo listened. Then he said she was right, and adjusted his approach accordingly. This capacity for critical dialogue, for receiving instruction, genuinely considering it, and pushing back when she had reason to, was not common in young athletes of Catherine's age and circumstances. Catherine's willingness to engage, to disagree respectfully and substantively, was partly a function of her intelligence, and partly of the relationship she had always had with her father, who had never talked down to her about surfing, who had always engaged with her assessments of her own performance as though they were worth taking seriously, because they were. Her circle of peers in those years was small but significant. Among this group, Catherine had the closest friendship with a girl named Sophia, 2 years older, who surfed with a power and aggression that Catherine admired. Sophia was the person Catherine would call after a bad competition to dissect what had gone wrong, and the person Catherine would celebrate with after a good one. She would tell me when I surfed badly, Sophia would say, later, of Catherine. Not harshly, just directly. That was not your best. What happened? And she expected the same from me. She didn't want people around her who would just agree with everything. The first time Catherine traveled internationally for a competition, she was 16, and the trip was to Costa Rica for a regional championship. It was her first time on an airplane, her first passport, her first experience of being in another country. She processed the experience with characteristic attention, noting everything, filing everything, comparing the surf culture she encountered in Costa Rica to the one she had grown up in. The competition itself went moderately well. She finished middle of the field in the women's division, which, for a 16-year-old competing internationally for the first time, was an honest result. She was not satisfied with it and made no pretense of being satisfied, but she was also not crushed by it, because she had the perspective to understand that she had learned things in 2 days in that competition that she could not have learned in months of training at home. Being a female surfer in El Salvador in the early 2010s required navigating a particular landscape. The surf culture in La Libertad and El Tunco was predominantly male, as surf cultures tend to be. And while it was not actively hostile to women in the water, it was not organized around their needs or their advancement in ways that male surfing took for granted. Equipment was designed and marketed for men. Coaching resources were oriented toward male competitors. Catherine navigated this with a practicality that was neither resignation nor resentment. She surfed. She surfed until she was better than most of the people who might otherwise have condescended to her. And then she surfed some more. She did not make the political argument for her presence in the lineup because she had understood early that arguments require the other party's willingness to engage, and that the most effective argument in surfing is the one you make on the wave. By 17, she was competing at the national championship level with consistent results, placing in the top 3 in the women's division at major Salvadoran surf events. She told her father, in the matter-of-fact tone she reserved for things she was most serious about, that she thought she could get to the ISA World Junior Surfing Championship. Maybe not this year, but the year after. She had been watching the results, and she thought she was capable of qualifying. Her father nodded slowly. He was quiet for a moment. "What do you need?" he said. This was always his first question. Not, "Are you sure?" Not, "That seems ambitious." "What do you need?" It had been his first question every time she had brought him something that required his support, and it had never changed. It was the question of a man who had made a decision about his role in her life and saw no reason to revisit it. She told him what she needed. He listened, and then they both went back to work.